Hello guys, and welcome to the first of my class guides. The aim of this series is to cover every healer and DPS spec in WoW, going over the basic gameplay, rotation, talents, foods, stats, all that good stuff. Starting with the Unholy DK, this is one of my favorites. I know you guys are just here for information, so I'm going to leave an annotation page where you can follow links to jump to sections. Start wherever you like, leave whenever you like. I'm here for your convenience. We're going to be starting with a too long didn't watch section with pros and cons. So let's get right into it and let's go. The Unholy DK is the master of dark magic, summoning the undead and wielder of huge, devastating two-handed weapons. It's a very methodical and slow-paced melee spec. It has crazy single target burst and lots of awesome cooldowns. It's one of the more difficult melee specs to learn, but once you get there, it's very satisfying to use. We're going to jump into a list of advantages and disadvantages to the Unholy DK now. Advantages are that it has a fun and satisfying rotation, more advanced version of the classic builder-spender rotation. There's lots of stuff to think about while you're playing, it's very engaging. It has insane AoE bursts, some of the best in the game when we get to higher groups of enemies. If you take the Clawing Shadows talent, it has a pseudo-ranged playstyle with only one actual true melee range ability in Festering Strike. It has lots of cooldowns. It's incredibly strong defensively, with AMS and Icebound Fortitude making it one of the most defensive melee specs in the game. Almost impossible to die if you play well. And lastly, it has just an awesome theme. If you like the necromancy side of things, the melee combined with magic, you will like DK. The disadvantages now, it's sometimes slow. It does have a bit of downtime. Can be hard to manage when you're new, but that will pass. It's lacking mobility. It has not much mobility. If you don't take Wraithwalk, it only has a 30% move speed boost. It has ramp time, so it kind of sucks at swapping targets. It's much better if you're left on a single target. And lastly, it is lacking single target sustained damage. It's insane with AoE, but when you're left on a boss for 5 minutes, you will see yourself drop a little bit. But what can you do? We're going to jump over to talents next. We'll take an in-depth look at the talents, then we'll go on to rotation and gameplay. I'll see you guys there. Alright, so let's take a look at the talents for Unholy DK. For our first row, we have Infected Claws, All Will Serve, and Clawing Shadows. In single target situations, we're going to want to take All Will Serve. This will summon an extra Skelling Boy, there he is, for our Raise Dead ability. He'll just do some extra single target damage for us. In AoE, we're going to want to take Infected Claws. This will make our pet apply extra wounds on his hits. When he's transformed, he'll apply wounds in an AoE. This is why this is so good for AoE. Clawing Shadows is currently behind. However, I would still suggest taking a look at it because it's pretty fun. It makes our Skirt Strike a 30-yard range ability. Causes it to do pure shadow damage, which will pierce armor. And it turns us into sort of a pseudo-range DK, making Festering Strike our only melee range ability. So if we take this, we can do a lot of our rotation at 30 yards, which is really, really fun, actually. For the second row, we got Bursting Sores, Ebon Fever, and Unholy Blight. Single target, we want to take Ebon Fever. It makes Virulent Plague do 15% more damage over half the duration. This shortens our Virulent Plague down, which means we need to refresh it more often, but it's a really reliable source of extra single target damage. It's pretty passive, it's not that hard to use, it just makes it that you have to refresh it a bit more. In AoE, we want to take Bursting Sores. This synergizes really well with Infected Claws, the pet applying wounds in an AoE. This makes our wounds burst, deal more damage, and deal AoE damage when they do burst. Unholy Blight, not really taken. Surrounds yourself with a vile swarm of insects. It's basically another dot. Sadly, it's not taken at the moment. This row's utility, Asphyxiate's just a stun. Pretty good to have. Death's Reach increases the range of Death Grip and makes it reset on a kill. This is pretty good for leveling, but otherwise not really taken. Grip of the Dead is really good in certain situations in Mythic Plus. Necrotic, for instance, this will slow everything so your tank can get away and drop stacks, or you can use it on the final boss in Atoll Dazar on the ads that are spawned, stuff like that. The 60 row Soul Reaper is taken in pretty much all situations. It adds an extra button, so it makes the spec a little bit harder, but it is 2 on-demand runes, and it applies a debuff that when you kill the target, gives you a 10% haste buff. Pretty good. Can be a little bit difficult to use, so if you're new to Unholy DK, I recommend Pestilent Pustules. It is a more passive version, doesn't add an extra button, just makes it so bursting a wound has a 10% chance to grant you Runic Corruption, which gives you some runes back. It's quite nice. Harbinger of Doom, not really taken. Makes Sudden Doom at Death Coil proc, trigger 15% more often, and it lets it accumulate 2 charges. Not really taken, however, it does have some synergy with Summon Gargoyle, so if you want to run that talent, you should take Harbinger of Doom as well. 75 is another utility row. There's 2 real options here, Death Pact and Wraithwalk. Death Pact, if you want more survivability, it's an instant 50% heal, which will put a 30% healing absorb shield on you, so that'll make your healers have to catch up a little bit, but it can save your life. Wraithwalk, extra movement, 70% move speed for 4 seconds. Taking any action will cancel it, however, because it is a channel, which kind of sucks. Spell Eater's not really taken, makes your anti-magic shell 30% larger. For the 90 row, this is where our big AoE comes in, Epidemic. This is the largest AoE you will ever see in your life. It causes your Virulent Plagues to flare up, dealing AoE damage to everyone around them. Each Virulent Plague will do AoE damage, so this stacks insanely well against really large packs of enemies. If you have like 10 plus enemies with a Virulent Plague on them, and you press this, you will see your damage go insane. Defile, not really taken. It replaces Death and Decay with a stronger version of Death and Decay with a cool new graphic. That's about it. Pestilence, this is taken single target. It makes Death and Decay have a 10% chance to apply a festering wound. Pretty unlikely to occur. 10% is not that big. You'll get about 1 extra wound per Death and Decay. It is, however, a single target damage increase, while Epidemic is not. So as soon as you have 2 targets, you want to swap to Epidemic and start using this over Death Coil. It's an AoE Runic Power dump. So single target, you will dump your Runic Power on Death Coil. AoE, you'll dump it on Epidemic. 2 targets and above. Our 100 row, we have Army of the Damned, Unholy Frenzy, Summon Gargoyle. Unholy Frenzy is currently taken in all situations, Raid and Mythic Plus. However, Army of the Damned can be used in some situations if you want to have Army of the Dead off cooldown for every boss. This is the only way to do it. Since Army's an 8-minute cooldown, it's generally not off between each boss because there is an 8 minutes. This will allow that, so Death Coil reduces the cooldown of Apocalypse and Army of the Dead by 5 seconds. Apocalypse by 1, Army by 5. Unholy Frenzy is another active, it's a cooldown, a mini Lust. 1.3 minute cooldown, increases haste by 20% and causes your autos to infect the target with a wound. This can be really strong. You pop it on the opener, you pop a Festering Strike, it applies a wound, and then you instantly pop Apocalypse with 4 wounds, and it's a really cool opener. Haste is always fun as well, it makes the whole gameplay faster. Summon Gargoyle, while not taken, is one of my favourite talents. It summons a Gargoyle for 30 seconds. All the Runic Power you spend while it's up will increase its damage. So you stack up your Runic Power, you pop this, and then you do Epidemics and Death Coils as much as you can while it's up to make it own, basically. It starts doing shit tons of damage with each hit, and it gets pretty crazy. But sadly, right now, Unholy Frenzy is way better, because 20% haste, you can't put that down. It's half a lost, basically. Alright, yeah, so for single target, we're going with All Will Serve, Ebon Fever, Asphyxiate, Soul Reaper, Wraithwalk, Pestilence, and Unholy Frenzy. For our AoE and Mythic Plus build, we want Infected Claws, Bursting Swords, Asphyxiate, Soul Reaper, Wraithwalk, Epidemic, and Unholy Frenzy. That's it for the talents, guys. Let's jump over to the rotation opener and the gameplay. I'll see you there. Alright, so let's talk about how this thing works, single target. We have 3 core principles when it comes to DK as a whole, Unholy DK. We want to be applying and spending wounds with Festering Strike and Scourge Strike, keeping our Virulent Plague up at all times with Outbreak, and avoiding the overcapping of Runic Power with Death Coil. That's the basic rotation priority. Keeping the disease up at all times, apply wounds. spend them till we're down to 0. Make sure we don't overcap on Runic Power by pressing Death Coil. When we're down to 0 wounds, apply more. Spend on Death Coil. And we want to make sure we're never pressing Scourge Strike on the target unless there is a wound there available. Death Coil. Apply more wounds. Death Coil. Spend them. Death Coil. Spend the wounds. That's basically it. With Pestilence Talented, we want to drop Death and Decay on cooldown as well to apply wounds with the Death and Decay ticks. So that's the basic single target. Let's talk about cooldowns. So we have Unholy Frenzy, Dark Transformation, and Apocalypse, and Army of the Dead, of course. These are our main 4 cooldowns. Unholy Frenzy makes us faster. It makes our auto attacks apply a wound really strong. Each auto attack will apply a wound guaranteed. That's really good for the opener. It makes it a lot faster. It allows you to spend a lot more of your runes on Scourge Strike instead of Festering Strike. Dark Transformation transforms our pet into a stronger version of our pet. We pretty much want to pop this on cooldown as well as this, although we want to make sure that we are never leaving the boss while this is active. So we have to make sure that we're able to stay on the boss for 12 seconds after this is popped. For Apocalypse, we want to pop it with 4 wounds on the target. You got to have 4 wounds, it'll summon 4 ghouls. Do not pop it with any less than 4 on the target. Army of the Dead, of course, it's an 8-minute cooldown. You generally use it on pull 2 seconds before the pull as you're running in. The minor cooldown thingy we have here is Soul Reaper. This is basically to speed up our rotation. We got no pet out right now, hold on. So this is to speed up our rotation. When we're down to 1 rune, we press Soul Reaper, puts us back up to 3. It's really nice. Eliminates a lot of that downtime that we sometimes get with DK. So yeah, it's a basic builder spender, avoiding overcapping on resources, avoiding Virulent Plague dropping, etc. So that's our cooldowns and our single target. So for our AoE, let me change talents. Epidemic, Infected Claws, Bursting Sores. It becomes a lot more about Runic Power for our big damage here. So again, Virulent Plague on everything. Apply wounds. Death and Decay also becomes a lot more important in AoE. We want to drop it when we have wounds already on the target, although not now because I have full Runic Power, so I want to Epidemic a couple times. We got wounds on, drop Death and Decay, and then ideally throughout Death and Decay's duration, which I have here, I want to be Scourge Striking, Epidemic when I'm capped on Runic Power, and just keep Scourge Striking. The reason for this is that Death and Decay will make your Scourge Strike hit anything inside it while you're standing in it. So if you have wounds up on everything, which you will, because Dark Transformation combined with Infected Claws makes your pet AoE and apply wounds to everything in an AoE. So the idea is, keep Virulent Plague up, we Death and Decay, and then we start Scourge Striking, and you see it'll pop the wounds on this target even though I'm not targeting it, because my Scourge Strike's hitting everything inside Death and Decay. Virulent, keep Epidemicing, as long as we have more than 2 targets, keep Epidemicing to avoid overcapping and Runic Power. But yeah, so the AoE burst gets insane. We pop Dark Transformation, our pet starts applying wounds to everything. Once everything has wounds, we Death and Decay, and we just Scourge Strike the shit out of the target, and it will just go crazy. You'll start getting insane amounts of Runic Power, insane amounts of damage from the wounds all bursting, and it gets pretty nuts, guys. Alright, so that's AoE and single target down. Now the opener. Let's have a look at this. The opener involves pretty much just popping all our cooldowns, and it's just a faster version of our single target rotation. So we want to Army of the Dead when we're running in, Virulent Plague, Death and Decay, and then as soon as we hit the boss, we want to Unholy Frenzy, Apocalypse. We want to make sure we're not overcapping on Runic Power, of course. Apocalypse and we hit 4 wounds, and then we just continue our single target rotation as usual, dropping Death and Decay. But it's just a lot faster, so it becomes a lot more difficult to avoid overcapping on those resources. We want to be basically all at the same time be managing runes, Runic Power, and wounds, and our plague here. So Scourge Striking when we have wounds available, Death and Decaying, Death Coiling to avoid overcapping, Festering Strike to apply more wounds, Scourge Strike, etc. You get it. It's a really fun opener. We do insane single target burst with our Army of the Dead. Because it's an 8-minute cooldown, it's a very strong single target burst. Soul Reaper to regain some of those runes and keep it going. There's a little bit of downtime with Unholy, but you'll find that you sometimes need it to just like regain a bit of your thought process, because Unholy is a very methodical spec. You're having to plan everything you're doing a few seconds in advance. You've got to have wounds on the target ready to go when Apocalypse comes back. For AoE, you've got to have wounds on the target ready to go for when you drop Death and Decay. You got to be making sure you keep an eye on your runic power to not overcap. Eye on your cooldowns to pop them when they come back up. So that's it for the rotation and opener, guys. I'm going to jump over to some of the more detailed stuff. Stat priorities, gems, food, Azerite traits. I'll see you guys there. Thank you so much for listening. Alright, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about this, so I'm going to put up a page covering all of it. I will, however, talk about the stat priority. Single target is haste, crit, versus mastery. AoE is mastery, crit, versus haste. For Azerite traits, for single target, Festamite, Treacherous Covenant, and Magus of the Dead. For AoE and Mythic Plus, you want Hell Chains, Festamite, and then Treacherous Covenant in that order. For stuff like enchants and food, generally just go for haste. I'll leave up the specifics on the screen, but I don't really want to go too much into it and waste you guys' time. For trinkets, we want to go with the Ramping Amplitude Gigavolt engine from Mecha Talk in the Battle for Zaralor, and the Doom's Fury / Lion's Strength trinket from the World Boss in Arathi Highlands for our second best. Alright guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. If you do like the style of play that I've showed you today, I highly recommend you try this spec. It's one of my favorites. It may be low on the meters right now, but I think it's definitely worth giving a go. I think you'll fall in love with it if you give it a proper shot. It's pretty good in Mythic Plus right now. It's not that great in the raid, but in Mythic Plus, if your tank can pull large packs, it does own the AoE. The idea of this series is to showcase all the specs with an unbiased opinion. I'm not going to tell you not to play any of the specs. You're going to want to try all of them if you're new to the game. Don't listen to what the community says about whatever's weak, whatever's strong. Just give them a go. If you like the playstyle, play the spec. I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next guide. It's going to be Frost DK, another one of my favorites. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks again. If you guys have any questions you'd like to know about, or any further information about Unholy DK, feel free to come visit me at my Twitch channel, Jactus. I'm live every night at 7 PM Australian time till 2 AM. I also have a day stream on Saturday, 1 PM till 5 PM Australian time. I'm usually playing WoW. You'll find me playing all sorts of specs, but if you want to know more about Unholy, feel free to ask me, put it in the comments. I'll definitely answer. But other than that, guys, I'll see you there.